Ребят, снова всем привет, тех, кого еще не видел, ну и, соответственно, тех, кого видел тоже. Сейчас у нас будет, на самом деле, очень интересный доклад от инженера, специалиста, независимого исследователя и open-source разработчика Ивана Зорина. Поприветствуем его. Подойдешь? Дальше он вам расскажет интересные материалы, которые...
Ivan Zorin, developer, very interesting presentation, specialist, and he'll talk about very interesting things. He's open source developer. Hello, everyone. First of all, Edgar, he said there will be some insights from open source, and I would like to start my presentation from one of the points that open source, it's not about insights. Open source of a healthy person where all the processes are open and you can find anything, anybody can do whatever they want independently on where they are. A small presentation, a few words about myself. My name is Ivan. I'm a system engineer of open source. I'm developer, conference speaker, obviously, independent researcher, and I enjoy community parties, and from being students, since being student, I visit all those events and shows and stuff. So I've been working with the open sources for so long that with the same-minded people, we used to open some events in Moscow, and many people got together and spoke about. So we so in report GNOME we managed to made a report on security, and I contribute in many places, and this is one of my productive years looks like in Open Hub, and as a result of being one of those people who see a problem or a bug, we get upset, but we're not shy. We go to Bug Tracker and we register a bug, and suddenly I'm official maintainer of IronOS maintainer, open source firmware. This is for soldering hardware. Can you imagine this? Even soldering rods, they have firmware and they can be opened. So welcome to the 21st century. So any modern device that is more complex than a transistor, they have their own firmware. So on IronOS, they support not only soldering hardware, but also hardware irons and software. This is FreeRTOS based and plus three-party libs. Hardware is STM32 and microcontroller RISC-V. The project itself is founded, developed, and maintained by Ben Ralim V. Brown. It's not my project. I just contribute patches. How I got to this? I came to the IT world as a system engineer, as a developer, but the more you work with system software, you have to deal with hardware. When you study new hardware, so what you started with, so you go to a store, you buy some interesting hardware, you disassemble it, and if you're lucky, you can see URs that are unsoldered, and if you're not, then you can you are soldered ones. This is a main protocol of communicating with the device. It's a standard one, and in order to do something with your art, you need to connect to it. I'm tired of dealing with old soldering devices, and I ordered a soldering device on AliExpress, and I thought I will be learning about the basics. But when I saw, I started using stock firmware from the Chinese manufacturer, and I didn't like it. It was very inconvenient. So I realized what was happening, like 3 o'clock in the morning, and a Geek Hub, and I'm trying to figure out how it works and what it is in order to make it work for my needs. And that's how the thing started.
Несколько дисклеймеров. Да, это пока еще не начало
A couple
доклада.
of disclaimers. It's not the beginning of my presentation, it's just an intro to it.
Один из тех
First of all,
окрашенных по идеологии, которые разделяют
I'm one of those who
software и open source. Я немножко
loves free source, free software and open source terminology. I will tell you a little bit about it in the future. And despite the fact that here in the presentation we speak more about open source, but let's agree that when I use open source terminology, I mean free software. And here in this presentation, I express my own opinion. So I'm not schizophrenic, so it's my opinion and that's it. In my presentation, you'll see brands, companies, names and stuff. It's not advertising. I don't monetize it. So the slides you can find following the link and QR code at the end of the presentation, and so you will see it is available anyway. A little bit about history. I'm not going to talk about ancient history. If we two young students, Kemp Thompson and Richards, with MT11 when they were developing Unix. A short timeline and why I separate open source and free software, because there is quite an interesting historical and ideological nuance. And briefly, Unix itself emerged as an academic and a scientific OS. And despite the fact it was within the corporation of Bell Labs and it was making money with Bell Labs didn't care what technical processes they're making money. Since the money comes, we don't care. But then the company was bought by NTNT, and NTNT managed to get rid of the bank that was limiting the company to get income from any third-party business. So NTNT was dealing with telephones mainly, so there were telecommunications. So and as soon as they managed to lift the ban, they began to make money using it, and they were managed to intimidate those who managed to do the derivatives based on the Unix sources that they used to send to all the universities, colleges, and across the world. Then there was GNU project as in response to commercialization of Unix. And then in 90s, this story got to the turning point. So people from business came and they realized that using free software, you can actually make money of it. But since in any society, state, country, you can only have one ideology, so business ideology, it's making money. And I'm not saying it's good or bad. There is no any moral statement here. It's a fact. But since business doesn't need any other ideology but making money, they had open source initiative that distanced itself from the ideology of free software. And the main emphasis was there on the fact that free software is not good because you can make money off of it, but it's good because it's right. And here's a moral category, because it's right from the point of view of public benefit. So what is free software as part of the GNU project? There are 4 freedoms. Freedom to run the program, to study it, to distribute it, modify it, and to distribute copies and modified parts of it. So my talk begins. So what it's about? Most of the time, those guys who work in open source, they do cool talks about how to develop your own projects, how to register README, what to pay attention to. And I would like to tell you not only about this, but also about how, in my view, to contribute to other projects.
И что вы можете сделать для свободного
And what you can do for free software. All the same, when you do for proprietary software, in both, you can use your skills and expertise. Coding.
В обществе существует такое правило, что когда ты куда-то приходишь,
In society, there is such a rule. When you get somewhere, so don't act
прикинь, что какие здесь
like there is no one here. So first of all, look around, see what the rules of behavior they have, and then
что я вам всем рекомендую сделать,
Do.
если вы когда-либо собираетесь коммитить в какие-то
what I recommend you.
проекты,
If you contribute to some open projects, so turn on the non-printable symbols, because when you send some patches, it's better to make sure that these patches actually meet the style that is acceptable in the project.
Постарайтесь изучить ограничения платформы, потому что,
Also,
например,
try to study the limitations of the platform, because in IronS, they use C++ code, but it's used in such a way that if you look at the files that assemble IronOS, you'll see the -fno, and there is a whole list of features that turn off
всякого разного именно плюсового, такого как
many plus features like exceptions and many other things. So, and if you send a request to this project that requires some features that are not in the project, obviously this patch won't be accepted. Also, when you commit a patch, just think for a moment.
Насколько с точки зрения дальнейшей поддержки будет просто
In terms of further maintenance,
то, что вы сейчас
will it be
собираетесь
easy for the maintainer
иногда очень
to maintain this item? Because sometimes situations may turn strange. Sometimes the person sends an awful code, but it's clear to you that a person who has some expertise in it, so it will be absolutely unmaintainable code. In a short term, this code may solve a problem here and now, but you as an engineer can see
нет, лучше так не делать.
that it's not going to go. It's better not to do it this way.
Проверить уже принятые
I also recommend that we need to look at the accepted patches and then
себя локально. Почему?
reproduce the working environment locally. One of the targets is a microcontroller of RISC-V, and for this we use a very specific RISC compiler, and we managed to figure out in practice that it can work only for Linux. And if you have a RISC-V compiler that IronOS will assemble for your solution, that's good. But always try to use
сборочное окружение, причем еще до того, как
benchmark assembly
также refactoring
items.
важно,
So refactoring.
то, что
What's important to remember about refactoring?
refactoring это когда вы, да, спасибо,
This is when
когда вы меняете уже существующий код,
you change the existing code
добавляете ничего еще, вы не фиксите
and you don't use anything else. You don't fix bugs. You don't add features.
патчи от самих maintainers.
Some patches from some maintainers, they can look in such a way that
Одним
half of the project is overwritten, but with one pull request.
Юпитеру то не позволит.
But not everybody can do that.
Если вы контрибьютите в первый раз, то лучше так.
And if you contribute for the first time, don't do it this way.
Когда вы оформляете pull request,
Then, when you
обязательно всё-таки
register a pull request, it's important to provide a substantiation of it,
почему и
a
для чего
description,
вы это делаете.
why, what for, and so on and so forth, why you do it.
Грамотно, то
If you do it
maintainer
properly,
скажет вам только спасибо.
then the maintainer will
Что, слушай,
thank you,
классный патч, ты всё описал.
because it's a great patch, so everything is described and I have no objections. But if you just throw the patch over there and say, okay, fine, so I did it,
И тогда maintainer придется тратить свое
and
время,
then
чтобы
maintainer will need to
такое, зачем,
waste their time to figure out what it is, what for, and so on and so on.
по поводу обоснования.
About description.
Все мы любим магические
Yes, of course, we like magical constants, 0, 1, 42. It's a banal, trivial patch.
что, во-первых, теперь мне нужно
So what is use of it?
в голове
Well, first of all, you don't have to keep in mind some magic constants. Secondly, so if you're using advanced navigation systems in the code and you need to look
именованный enum определен
and figure out where this enum defined using the code, using navigation, you can get to those points where these constants are used in that value,
они имеют смысл.
in the value where they make sense.
Есть такая
Metrics.
схожая поговорка, по крайней мере в
There is this saying, at least in corporate world, as soon as you introduce metrics for some processes,
эти процессы. Люди будут
people don't improve the processes, they improve metrics.
в инженерном мире действительно есть
Fortunately, in engineering world, there is a physical limitation for the physical world,
это сборка Iron Ore
and that's what happened. This is Iron OS assembly
10P.
from my favorite TS80T,
Последним шагом выполняется проект линковки,
soldering rod.
процесс линковки. И
So you get the linking process,
файлы линкера устроены так, что они вам просто
and linking files, they're
вылезете за
compiled in such a way so they won't let you go into the firmware if you go beyond 46 kilobyte of memory. This is how much storage you have in STM in TS80P.
не мегабайт,
46 kilobytes, not gigabytes or megabytes. Well, it does sound kind of wild because in modern devices, they have 10 terabytes in a kind of regular desktop, but there are such worlds where 1 byte
У меня реально был такой случай,
plays,
когда я сам возился
makes a
с
difference.
прошивкой, и у меня
I
прошивка вылезала
used to
буквально на 3-4 байта.
tackle with this, tinkering with this firm, and the firmware was taking like 3-4
Потому
bytes.
что я этим занимался в
Tooling.
качестве
I love
подрядного.
tooling.
Не просто
I
появление
dealt with this when for MBDO and
до первых стадий
before the DOps, even before release of Docker and MBD, they have their own nuances.
что вы можете
Like in any project, what you can commit tests and or auto tests, checkers, linkers, and the whole
и
other types of audits and checks and concepts.
CI/CD и push-UML. У
CI/CD and push email.
который предоставляет вам какие-то
Any
облачные
service
сборки,
that provides you with some cloud assemblies.
в котором есть так
If
называемые
config file is the list of rules for a particular RCI/CD in the cloud,
ваша сборка.
according to which your assembly will be done. In my humble opinion, this push-email is the devil's tool, devil's toy, because it doesn't allow you
Поэтому, например, в
to get away from some assembly structure. So what you need to have in push email, in my view,
Actions checkout и actions upload.
you need to have action checkout and action upload.
Исключительно
All the
в
rest
ваших скриптах,
should be
которые вы
in your
сможете
scripts,
запустить
in the scripts that you'll be able to launch
стороннем
in
окружении.
any other
И несколько примеров.
third-party environment.
Например, по поводу совсем базового тулинга. Я
A
не
couple of examples, basic tooling. I don't know why, but in some projects, especially in the projects where they don't have a lot of maintainers,
нужно, помимо того, что
it's still, besides assembling the project, and you need to get all the sources, and you have to get to the documentation, you have to copy paste
чтобы запустить
2, 3, 4 commands instead of just launching one assembling process just with some command.
также
Iron OS, they had more or less the same, but it annoyed me because I don't like that stuff.
раньше надо было
On the left, you can see how you had to launch the assembly. You go to the source, you find the dockers,
хороший момент,
and
который вы можете
also there is another thing that you realize
свободным проектом
helping free projects.
создание скриптов
You can create scripts
проекта внутри эталонного
for
окружения.
building the project within the benchmark environment. As it was done in Iron OS, it was added
Когда я говорил про
when I was
и риск 5,
talking about special environment in the RISC-V compiler.
Compose вот с данными параметрами делает именно это. Он
Docker Compose does this, so it
по поводу
escalates our benchmark environment of building. C and C++.
момент можно
Important point.
озвучить. Даже если у вас весь проект в плане сборки реализован при
Even
помощи
if your project, in terms of
его инфраструктуры, вам не
environment is organized on the scripts and structure, so you can use tools of third-party projects, but only for checking, for checkers, validators.
LLVM это не просто
LLVM is good, and it's not just a compiler
платформы, но и
for some
различный набор
targeted platforms, but it has a whole set of different tools
на
to check the code if it's valid or not.
С питоном точно так же. И тут
The same with Python.
к началу в секции кодинг
And we get
важно включать
the
непечатываемые
point
символы.
why it's important to turn on the non-printable symbols. That's a classical
То есть, если вы такое попытаетесь заказать,
example. It's from Ironos. If you try to commit this one, so you can do this.
Black проверяет
So you
на соответствие стандартам.
look at the code of Python if they meet the standards.
Кстати, вот идея для
By the way,
Вот видите, в
idea
чём
for a
прикол?
commitment. See,
Black говорит,
Here's the trick.
замените одну строку на другую.
it says replace one line with another.
А что
Here's a question.
мешает лично вам сейчас
What
прийти домой или после
Doesn't allow you
скачать исходники Блэка? Это, кстати, относительно
to
последней версии.
download sources of
Скачать
Black.
исходники Блэка,
It's the latest version.
почему
To look up
это
why
существо, не
this
говорит
entity.
именно, что не просто замени то же самое на то же самое, а замени, потому
It's
что
not saying so replace one with another, but replace because you have two extra spaces. So here's an idea. So you come home, you open up the sources, you look at it, you see
эта логика,
where the logic is.
можете хотя бы даже попытаться открыть баг. А потом
You
еще,
can even try to open the bug
я уверен,
and then to have a pull request to the bug.
контейнеры вам скажут,
I'm sure that developers and maintainers will thank you.
если вам недостаточно какого-то своего
So
базового
if it's not enough for you to have your own basic tool, you can look at Write
моих
curl.
любимых проектов в плане
One of my
организации
favorite projects in terms of organizing the process.
чтобы туда закоммитить хотя бы
And in order
одну
to
строчку кода,
commit at least one line of the code,
должен пройти
your
217
patch
проверок.
need to go through 217 checks.
Чекеры, линтеры, анализеры,
Checks, linters, analyzers,
все, что мы так любим.
everything that we love so much.
Упомянуть, что я на
I
самом
forgot to
деле
mention
больше
that in fact,
всего, чем просто интересный доклад. Люблю мета-доклады, обзорные
I love meta
и тулинг на самом
presentations about certain things, and tooling is such a topic that it's not that you can have a separate talk, but you can even have a whole conferences, and they do that.
интересная тема.
It is a very interesting topic.
Что еще можно сделать для open source? Все же
What else can be done for open source?
уязвимость в XZ-utils, точнее backdoor.
You've heard about the
Как этого можно
vulnerability in
было избежать? То есть в чём там была проблема? В том,
XZ backdoor.
исходники
So what was the problem?
бинарники,
In the
которые
source, they had one thing, and in the binaries that they
каналом.
distributed in the channels, they were different.
Чтобы это исправить, существует такая
To fix it,
концепция, как reproducible builds. То
there is
есть,
such a
когда
concept as a reproducer of builds, when we can say that these
зарелизил
sources
соответственно,
that maintain a released,
точнее нет, не так. Бинарии, которые
so the
зарелизили,
binaries that were released
из тех исходников,
were assembled from the sources
потому что там с этим
that were released before, because there are many nuances with this one too, but that's a whole other topic.
незаслуженно ныне забыт Launchpad,
Also,
хотя он до сих пор работает. Есть такая компания,
Launchpad.
они развивают дистрибутив
People kind of forget about this. There's such company, Commodica, they developed
Они запустили
the distribution package of Ubuntu. So despite the fact that they have lots of GitHub, they have lots of features,
компоненты,
but they don't have very important component that can be used if you write or distribute or you want to contribute
свободные
to some desktop
А это
project.
именно официальные пакеты для
Official packages,
на базе Debian.
for
В случае с Launchpad
distribution packages. With Launchpad,
и тогда
you can package a certain application, and then the user
исходники какие-то бинарные
wouldn't have to
ваш пакет.
download some binaries or sources they can just add some packages to the source list
В следующий раз, когда вы обновите
and installing it, and next time when you will update
как разработчик,
the package as a developer, the user
пакет по стандартным
will get
каналам.
the package with this, through standard update channels.
Баги здесь
Also, you can report bugs here.
категорию. Почему?
Testing and reporting here are under the same category,
На самом деле работа с тем, как
because
вы правильно оформить
this is how you're going to work and properly
того, что вам нужно.
register technical
Не рофлю, я не троллю, это реальный
and describe technical requirements. So this is a real bug report, and that's the whole bug report. In some projects, I don't have all the screenshots for that, because in modern internet, if you see once on the internet, you won't be able to find it again. But in some free projects, they have certain templates to describe a bug. When you click on the button, I want to describe a bug, and you get already a pre-written form. And either some projects where you don't have this form, you can add it to the project. So there are such projects that are so much annoyed with some strange users with odd reports that in the first line of the report, in the report of the error, it says, "Dear friend, there will be fields down there, so read all of them, fill them out, click the box if you filled it." So if you don't do at least one of them, so there's a bug report template. If you delete something from there or remove something, we, dear friend, will permanently ban you from our project, and you will never come to us again. And never there is wipe coding. If you still vibe coding, so this is not how things are done today. Vibe gets to a different level. Now in the trends we can see vibe reporting. When people take LLMs, they throw the sources and they say, GPT, give me some great security bugs that when I fill them out, I get not only CVE and not only recognition, but also get some bug bounty. That's a great idea. No, because all this leads you to the fact when the open projects that are ready to pay you for vulnerabilities, they drown in tons of absolutely weird reports. And another peculiarity of this project is Daniel Stamber, the main maintainer, has a great blog and great talks about open source. And as soon as some topic shows up in bug reports and all that, or in trackers, and somebody is asking about something, and this is something that in their view should be explained, and after they answer in the bug, or even if they fix the bug, he goes to his blog and he tells in his blog, for example, yes, we had this request, let me explain it to you, how we were fixing it and why we're fixing it and why it's important. So KLM.
So this is the situation. Curl is facing this and Python is facing this, and right now you see by dates that situation is not changing. January 24, December 24, and post that was made approximately a couple of weeks ago. This is the screenshot from it. And that's not it. What can be even cooler than vibe reporting? Vibe pull requesting. Getting ready for these slides, I got phased out for about an hour and a half while reading all these comments and making screenshots. This story is in Unland, and please look into it. What is the interesting? There's a Microsoft. It has .NET. In the beginning, .NET was proprietary and closed one. They rolled out open source. And because Microsoft also owns GitHub, one of the main killers in GitHub is Copilot. And right now, Copilot can not only help you with adding the code when you enter GitHub, but it also can get pull requests. I'm not joking. It's not ruffle, it's not trolling.
Сотрудник Microsoft, который
This is Microsoft employee
Copilot делает
who does prompts for Copilot for the fixing bugs in .NET, to fix bugs in .NET. And in discussions of such reports, they started having a competition for the funniest comment.
моих любимых.
These are two favorite ones.
Да, вот. И что бы вы думали?
What do you think?
Там один из ребят
Yeah, one of the guys writes, "Oh, this is a cool idea, but what if we are not just going to make
pull requesting, но и
wipe pull requesting, but also wipe
pull reviewing.
pull reviewing?"
Наберите воздуха в грудь. Готовы? Я не знаю, что с вами будет.
Okay, breathe in. I don't know what's going to happen with you after that. And it exists. Copilot Code Reviewing now generally available. Copilot Code Reviewing. Okay, we're going to win.
Первый век.
Welcome to 21st century.
Говоря, не совсем всю эту историю понимаю, потому что
Honestly speaking, I don't really understand this story because, as you know from the horror movies, you shouldn't split and go down with horror music into the underground. Because when next time you're going to watch a horror movie and scream, don't do that on the screen. Please remember about those modern AI developments who behave in real life in such a way as if they've been
не читали Айзека Азимова.
have not been reading Isaac Asimov.
Также можно делать дизайн. Два примера. Один общий, потому
We can also make two designs, one general one,
что свободная операционная система.
because there is a desktop OS, which suddenly has a screenshot by default, and nothing stops you to participate in some competition
Подать
and
работу, какую-нибудь красивую фотографию.
submit your work, a beautiful picture, or image, your own design, to be included into default
У нас есть иконки,
background,
у нас
and we have
дисплей на
icons, OLED display, on which these icons are displayed for different activities, and
отдельный человек, который в этом очень хорошо.
we have a special person who knows a lot about it, and
Иконки по мере необходимости.
he makes different icons if it's needed.
Помимо этого есть различные аддоны. Вот, например, на первом докладе
Then there's different add-ons. During the first presentation, we've heard a VS Code plugin story. Yes, that's an option. Because even if you're afraid of some big projects and you're afraid due to some reason to make your first steps in it, there are plugins, there are extensions, there are scripts. For Warshark, there are wonderful side dissects. And why I put IDE plugins in the first place? Because the situation is a very unique one, proprietary, closed and corporate product, which
особенно рядовому инженеру просто невозможно.
is impossible to purchase in our realities, but everybody uses it. And moreover, in addition to the fact that everybody is using it, even for the proprietary products, there are open plugins for the same evil, which are really powerful by their capabilities. And an example of GDB, that's a pretty old product. GDB was produced before any Pythons and other script languages would allow us to do any extensions. GDB has its own config language, which doesn't look like anything else, like Bash or any other script languages, and it's absolutely different. But there's a well-known in Russian circles researcher, Makasi, security researcher, and in his personal GitHub you can find .file for GDB, which takes 3,500 lines on a GitHub config language, and when you launch GDB with this config, GDB becomes into a control panel for the spaceship maintenance, and it's made on a binary for the Mac OS on the ARM, and because such configs are opened, you don't have to use them completely. You can use them for inspiration, so that you can grab some features that you might need without pulling the config completely. And this is one of the main successes of all those various avast.file repositories which are being shared by developers all over the world. And I do hope that you understand what I'm speaking about, because there might be a person who does something specific, puts their dot files, and everybody else gives stars, because this is very cool.
Когда я открываю главную директорию проекта на GitHub, вот все, что
So when I'm looking at GitHub, everything that you see in a file list, to me, it's like main entrance, like interior.
директории проекта навалено все.
If in a root directory, you will find everything stockpiling, scripts and documents and source codes. If there is one small project and developer is not able to do that, then he can say thank you. Well, the documentation should be made simpler, so please don't write big explanations. In a very simple English language and steps present in documentation, they should be reproducible so that the person, without including his brain copy-pasting from documentation, could reproduce everything that is in the documentation. If this doesn't happen, then please go back for reports and go into the reports and report it.
Часто задаваемые вопросы — это тоже проблема. И
FAQs, this is another problem.
не очень хорошо работаете с кодом, вы можете посмотреть уже открытые баги, уже открытые вопросы. И если
You can look at the open bugs and open questions.
какой-то вопрос повторяется больше одного раза, то
The question which is repeated more than one time, you can...
Но лучше всего, если это будет не просто
But the better thing, if it's not just going to be the separate file, but you know those FAQs, you can put them in the place in the documentation where you expect, where the user expects to see them as a user. For example, in this part, in the main README file was not available at all, and in the bug tracker, we constantly seen people who've been asking, like, where can I download the final stable release? You say, okay, guy. You go into releases, everything is attached there. But where can I download the recent development builds? And then you have to go to actions, you have to look at the final builds, drop the link. I got tired of all of this, and I have added into the main README a piece of section which is available by direct links, all the stable assemblies, and notwithstanding the fact that it's markdown, GitHub gives you HTML anchors, and where I can find Buildway, you just give him this particular link. Don't be afraid, there's going to be some more hardcore. I just wanted to start for something simpler, translations. Young people don't know, old people have forgotten that. I wasn't able to bring you a great example from modern projects, because translations, this is something like that. But right now, translations have meaning, even though English as Latin language will stay with us for a long time as scientific popular language.
Советов, ну да, не стоит пользоваться.
Several advices, please don't use any AIs, prompts, and other. And it doesn't matter how well do you know the language, you should always understand the topic you're reading about. Community.
Во-первых, по моим личным субъективным наблюдениям,
First of all, according to my subjective feelings, if you want to get into a small or medium project together with inspired people in our realities, it's much simpler than to get inside of a serious project, especially the one which is open sourced, cooperational.
Там вас, скорее всего, вряд ли...
Because most likely there is nobody waiting for you, but generally speaking, it is necessary to always be adequate person
И быть
and
профессионалом.
be professional.
Никогда не читайте про ваш
Another
проект,
thing, never read about your project. Doesn't matter how cool and useful it can be.
источниках.
In the third-party sources, different Reddits, Hacker News, etc., etc., etc. And in our country, well, it is related to our country, definitely. So don't read them. I didn't have a story.
Флэшбэк.
It's a flashback. One of my first projects I've released, it was an indicator of battery status reflection. And when it was written by the first minor version, some European site in the comment, it was, well, pretty cool, nice, wonderful, great.
Причем это даже не опубликовал.
Well,
Просто увидели, добавили,
I didn't publish, they've seen it, they added it.
а на некоторых ресурсах
And in some resources, everything was very sad.
сообщества, наверное,
About the community, everybody heard about it.
сказать.
What I would like to say about that, please don't go to communities like that.
На это отреагировать. Вот про это будет.
That's how I can react about that. And there's going to be a presentation about it a little bit later, and I recommend you to go there. In addition to well-known incident with the developers community for Linux kernel in Russia, I noticed when the interview in the Phoronix forum, Taitso, who is a developer, and what have I discovered interesting for myself? I don't want to
Скажем так,
just
как я это понимаю?
flip anybody else's words, but how do I understand it subjectively? The person writes, okay, he wants to work, yes, he needs food, everything is right, separately everything sounds good, but when you put it together, you understand that basically the person says, okay, I have my employer, yes, we do the open source projects, but my employer pays me money, so if I'm increasing his profits, I will do in open source only things that is beneficial to my employer. But sometimes the interests of community can part with the interests of the employer. And it is obvious that there could be a situation that even if independent community, which is not supported by any corporations, will come to such a project and will say, okay, guys, we have delivered such a wonderful patch, but if this patch will be against interests of corporation, which is responsible for this open source project, most likely this patch will not be accepted.
Это что называется, кто такие друзья?
And this is something, who are those open source friends and how they contribute against the community. We don't need such games. I mean the open source, meaning about the hockey open source community. And what all this has to do together, what about it? But let's see, there are two pictures here. Both of them have sportsmen. Both of them have sportsmen from Russia, but there is one peculiarity. On one side, you see a group of people, with all due respect to these athletes of high achievements, people who are trying, or who were trying, not to associate themselves with Russia as a state. And there's another community where a person comes to the stage and he says, Russians, we did it. The person who had a world record in hockey, and he says that, yes, that's us. So translating this into technical community, no matter, well, in which community you would like to find yourself, yes, of course, in the back mind, we all are smart people, but to my modest point of view, and coming back to the beginning, when you come to some project, first look around.
При общении с людьми и наблюдении за ними,
when you communicate with people, when you observe people, in a couple of months you can understand what kind of people they are and what kind of a community is this. And generally speaking, you don't want to find yourself in a situation when, oh, we thought they are good guys, but they are, look at them. If you need an example from a deeper story and all this situation,
переходим, но я хотел...
Well, I'm moving in the wrong direction, but I wanted to say a couple of words about that. The first person should not be introduced.
Я не знаю, встречался ли
I
Халатников
don't know has ever Halatnikov met Hawking during his Western lectures, as it was shown in the movie Theory of Everything. But historical fact is that Hawking in 1973 was visiting Moscow and met well-known physicists, astronomers, and nuclear physicists. 1973, it's in the middle of the Cold War, and still one Western scientist come to the Soviet Union and meets people who participated in nuclear project, thanks to which we all basically and physically exist and are alive. And by the way, both about scientists and scientific exchange. This time during PhDs, the audiences are called by the names of scientists. If you watch it in the broadcasting, please come to PhDs. It's pretty cool. Even though if you are from another state, we have no bears and we are not breaking Pentagon. About scientists.
Теория информации есть такая теорема.
In the theory of information, there is a theorem. No, I will reword it.
Американец, швед и русский
American, Swedish guy, and Russian guy sounds like a joke.
Шеннон, один из залов.
Shannon,
Клод Шеннон.
Claude Shannon, one of the answers, Nyquist and Kotelnikov
Теорему. Практически
created a theorem practically independently from each other, thanks to which we today are using digital signals.
Если бы они работали сообща,
If they'd work together,
возможно,
possibly
мы бы сейчас были на другом уровне технологий.
we would be on a totally higher level of technologies. It's like, imagine, after the invention of the wheel, every next person who needed the car or a cart, he should have reinvented the wheel from the beginning. And what sense in it? No sense. That's why I would like to hope that
Вся эта политическая истерия
all this political history will disappear. And
говорю о мир, дружба,
I'm not speaking about friendship, chewing gum. We don't need chewing gum. It was the 1990s.
нужен мир,
But we need peace, work, labor, and cooperation jointly.
в целом не одумается,
Because if the humanity will not think it over, then I'm afraid that we all will become into radioactive ashes, like it was in Sarah Connor's dreams. That's why I sincerely do hope that bad horror will be a horror, but reality
фильма «Поток».
will be a story of the flow film. Perhaps you're thinking, okay, send him to the crazy house, but what the animation cartoon has to do with all of this? Well, the thing is that open source, it's also an art with a capital letter A.
Несколько месяцев назад
Because several months ago,
анимационный фильм
animation movie was done by independent studio from Europe, which consisted of 20 people, and it was completely made and rendered in Blender. Blender, it's an open source software to work with animation. And to my point of view, there is irony
анимационный фильм,
that animation movie, which speaks about the need to cooperate,
несмотря на все
that only together, irrespectively to all the differences and problems, we as human beings
фильм от «Зверушки» можем выжить вместе,
can
особенно
survive together,
на уровне.
even at the bottom level.
Душу. По-моему, в этом есть некая ирония.
It makes me
Так, да, возвращаемся к
feel
open source.
warm. Okay, let's go back to open source. Those of you who left, it's their problem, because right now I'm starting speaking about the hardware hate.
Ну, потому что open source это не
Well,
только про софт.
open source, it's not just about the software, it's about hardware as well, because hardware as open source
Бывает открытым.
can be open hardware. Here is an example of
такого железа.
similar hardware. And the thing is not that this is a Tindy site, not Tinder.
Это такой Kickstarter,
Roughly speaking, this is a Kickstarter where you can order
бейкерить. Вы
motherboards. You don't have to bake it yourself. You pay money to a person who will bake and solder them himself, and then he will deliver them to you. It's an American site, and it's not a thing. And the thing is not that it costs $30, but it's not publicly produced,
Кулибин
not mass-produced. So if somebody forgot about this thing, in the context of soldering machines, this is USB-C microcontroller responsible for the protocol power delivery protocol. So every time when you connect your charging device to a mobile phone through the USB-C, this small thing makes its work, and this is the most popular microcontroller to work on USB-C protocol. And how the USB-C power works, there is a separate line to which devices agree with each other how much power should be delivered to the device.
Я подчеркиваю, что она больше не
Why am I emphasizing that you cannot buy anything like that? Well, if I want to figure out, if I want to get it, in case with the open source hardware, I go into the description, I find the schematics, and I understand how it works. I understand what is to be done in order to reproduce it. Maybe not similar physically schematics, but plus minus something similar by functionality. Also, there's a cool thing as 3D printing, and I would like to recommend to all of you to find some friends who has access to 3D printers. I have such good friends, Elementus printers, and they print different components to different people, and I was really skeptical about this. But modern 3D printing has reached a level that it's very powerful, strong, and pretty cool. And if you have similar motherboards which you don't want to do with your hands or drop additional soldering mixture and making a... You can print STL models on 3D printer. Easy. Here's an example of more advanced boards. In the beginning, I've been speaking about UART. This is open hardware, and you can go into the repository of all these projects, download Herber files, send them to the factory, and they will be printed for you. First two boards are boards for the USB armor to communicate with the Raspberry Pi in the USB flash HackerF. It's SDR. SDR is the board which allows you to listen to radio and send signals, radio signals. Another thing, in addition to small boards, big boards, there are so-called hardware modes for existing board projects. What do we see in a given case? Well, in a given case, you see Pencil V2 in a transparent body, which has attached a three-color LED. He came to Bugtracker and said, okay guys, I've invented such a cool mode. You take a disconnect pencil, attach to it three-color LED to these test points, and here you additionally have how this can be done, and then here's the code of the firmware, and the patch is going to control these LEDs. This is a picture from the video where the LED lights, depending from the range of temperatures. If the solder gets cool, it's green color. If it's getting hot, it's orange color for soldering machine. Okay, Ivan, you have described everything so wonderfully. Okay, let's go into the open source. Will there be any disadvantages? Yes, there will be some disadvantages. And this is a financial problem. This also involves a social problem and involves a labor problem because, for example, what would I would like to emphasize here? Well, the thing is not about the glory by itself, but the thing is about acceptance and acknowledgement.
Достойной награде за свои...
Proper
Потому что, например,
remuneration for your work, because not many people think about it, but open source developers, it's not the experience. When you work on an open source project, when you're in a sabbatical, as it is convenient to speak, if you switch from another job to another, you have a big sabbatical and you work on an open source project, please remember that it's not included into your work experience. And the HR department people, when you will start searching for a job, they will look at you and, okay, open source. So we are not considering it as an experience. Also, gaps in the professional activities also are a red flag. But it's an international problem. Why? Because will you guess the name of the program by letters, or you will call the word? This is the author and the only maintainer of GPG program, the program which is used practically by all of us every day without even our knowledge about it.
Скриншот из новости 9-летний, 10-летний.
This is 10-year-old news screenshot, but out of the recent thing, saying that nothing has changed. That's another open source project, very horizontal from the point of view that there is no big corporation behind it. FFmpeg, this is the set of utilities of work with video. And as with GPG, right now, when you look at this broadcast or you watch its recording, you use FFmpeg. But what is the problem here? But the Microsoft came to the guys and said, there is a critical bug. Let's go and fix it. But they say, okay, how come we don't do it like that? We're not Linux kernel. When they say in corporation what is to be done, no. Anyway, fix. After this, FFmpeg come to Microsoft and says, okay, guys, let's work on a paid open source model. Even curl does it like that. They have LTS assemblies, they have commercial support. And Microsoft said, no, fix it. That's it. So this is the story.
Ладно, все, бросаю open source, Иван. Ты меня разубедил. Все плохо. Но в чем польза? Польза.
But what is the usefulness?
Такое слово в русском языке, такой термин. Чувство
There's a word in Russian literature, the sense of own importance.
Дело не в собственной важности, дело в собственной полезности. И
Well, it's about the usefulness of yourself.
and чем пользуются другие люди, он, конечно, греет душу даже зимой, если счет за отопление еще не оплачен. Кроме того, это позволяет получить огромный набор скиллов, как софтовых, про вежливости сообщества я уже говорил, когда вы объясняете, что и как.
Community skills.
Также это прокачивает хард-скиллы и в проекте.
Also, it upgrades your hard skills, and in free software project, there is a full openness and transparency and a lot of happiness. For example, what do I understand under transparency? When I was very small and I looked at Windows load, I was thinking back then, for example, there is a copyright. What does it mean? All the people that have been developing Windows during all these years, they became the reference of this copyright, and there are companies and departments in some companies which are even prohibited to say where they're working or where they have been working. And I have friends like that who will never admit to this, even if you will torture them.
Еще одна жара. Здесь вы видите реверс паяльника.
Here's another heat. You see T101 soldering machine. I've been showing you the screenshot with the. In addition to Pencil, this equipment has been supported not because of these companies that manufacture these solders, except for Pen 54, but against it. You see how, the community, all the guys, 1,000 of comments, they have been reversing during long period of time these solderer. They dumped the firmware. They, put it into debugger. They followed all the trace and then added all of these. And then where else can you read a comment that tells you that civilization went into something else in order to have vulnerabilities?
Про GitHub. GitHub — это огромная платформа.
About GitHub, it's a big platform.
Если вы уходите с GitHub и начинаете...
So if you leave GitHub and you start a project of your own and start contribute outside of GitHub, you will look as this lonely cat.
Сообщество там, где есть проекты и их лидеры.
Communities where are the projects and leaders, and if they are at the GitHub, you will create 100,000 alternatives of the GitHub while you're not going to have projects which are interesting things.
Поэтому все-таки хотелось бы верить, что солидарность коммитящих победит.
So the solidarity of the committing people will win.
Мы все будем в одной лодке вместе, потому что некоторые считают, что, точнее как, хотелось бы напомнить о том, что электричество не берется...
I would like to remind you that electricity is not coming from the fork and products are not coming from supermarkets.
Если сегодня вечером смена инженеров не выйдет на атомную электростанцию...
Exchange, if the shift of engineers will not come to the power plant and truck drivers will not go to the route, you won't have food or electricity. Also, people who are feeding us and give us light and heat and open source. But, well, there is a similar situation here, because if in the network, nameless contributors will say today that, okay, we are tired, we are living open source, all of us together, the Perl after, the GPG after, the other project author of which you don't know but which is used everywhere, all over the place, it's going to be very sad. It's going to be very sad. And then I do hope that solidarity and internationalism are going to win. Sorry for taking so much time, but I wanted to say all these things to all of you. Sorry, if you have any questions left, then please approach me. That's what I wanted to tell you. First of all, it was a very rich and cool presentation. I was listening to you with a great joy. Thank you very much.